All right, let's go. Let's go. Happy Friday. Hope everybody's doing well. I was actually out of the country last week and back with a market update. We're going to be talking about several things today. Not only a market update, we're going to be talking about at least three things that you need to consider if you're thinking about selling, and not just in Florida, not just in the villages, but pretty much anywhere. So it doesn't matter where you're located. There are three things you really need to consider. Two are going to be pretty obvious. One's not going to be real obvious. And this is something I'm picking up on as I'm talking to a lot of people around the country. So we're going to talk about those things. We're going to be diving into like days on market and months of inventory, some changes in the real estate market, and then some things that have actually stayed the same. So I think pretty decent news overall. But let's look at, when we're looking at the number of listings on the market, looking at in the low 220s is pretty much where we are. So we haven't seen a big jump up in inventory, but what we have seen is in the last 7 days, we've seen 25 new listings, which is really low. Not necessarily for this time of year because it is July and it's hot and that type of thing. I think people are waiting. I think it's a really good time to sell. I don't think it's as good of a time, by the way, that, for when we look at the best time to sell, probably would have been back in March of this year, March, April, February, March, April. Would have been the best time. So I think we're off the peak, obviously, because we've seen inventory go up. And I think I think this is going to be a little bit better than what we're going to see later on this year. But you never know. Things could change. I still don't see a market crash, even though people are saying it's a market crash, run for the hills. That's not what we're seeing. And we're going to take a look at that. So 25 new listings, two price increases, 37 price decreases, which is not uncommon for what we've seen pretty much the whole year. So, people coming down in price. These are motivated people that are trying to sell. Six back on the market, 39 sold or closed, right? 39 closed, which is a decent number, pretty good number. Not as I think we've seen some lower numbers in the past months. Two expired listings, which I think is going to happen a little bit more. In other words, properties that were put on the market that didn't sell over a 3 to 6 month period. And then 36 pending, or 36 properties that have gone under contract, which is bigger than the new listing number of 25, which is a pretty good. That spread, by the way, the 25 to 36 is actually very similar to the numbers that we saw last year of the amount of new listings versus pendings. Now we saw, last year in this red hot, white hot market with more pending properties than new listings coming on the market, but the numbers were greater. So in other words, we might have seen 35 new listings and like 50 or 60 pendings, like that kind of spread. But this kind of spread basically means that the inventory count actually went down. We were in the 240 mark, now we're in the 220s. So it's come down a bit for the villages. Basically, that's what we're seeing. Now, another number that's interesting that I don't talk about a lot, it's actually saying in the last 7 days, 7 canceled properties, meaning people just decide, we're just going to keep it, we're going to rent it, that type of thing. And that's something we've advocated for a couple of people, just to tell you some stories. A couple of people said, they wanted this much, this amount, and we just advocated for them to just go ahead and rent, right? And I think my realtors will probably punch me for that. But the reality is we're here to tell people the truth. And sometimes, look, if you have to have this amount, and this amount is really what's, real, you might have to, either you're going to reduce the price or you're going to rent, just keep it or stay for that matter. The other thing that I'm advocating right now, and people need to understand this, and I think this is one of the tips that maybe is going to be pretty obvious, is that we need to understand as sellers that, okay, prices were about here in early spring. They're probably here right now because of the increase in interest rates, the Fed increasing the rate, right, 3/4 points a couple of days ago, I think it was Wednesday. and we're seeing an increase in inventory, increase in interest rates, which means, you know, more supply and demand, right? Prices could come down a little bit. And I think that's what we're seeing a lot of, you know, we've seen the price reductions, but we also have to look at this and look at it with perspective. Like I remember back in probably late 2020, early 21, where you can find an Amarillo for like 200, right? Like lower 200s. And now Amarillos are 300, and maybe they were 340 earlier on this year. So they've come down a bit, but you know, it just means that there's an adjustment in the marketplace, and it means that just because you're not going to get as much as you thought, it's less, but it's not as low as what it was 2 years ago. So 2.5 years ago, like pre-COVID. So I think that's one thing that we really need to be mindful of. The other thing, obviously, if you don't have to sell, we're like, don't sell. Like if you don't have to sell, but if you really would like to sell, it makes sense. Or if you have to sell, it makes sense. Because I think it's going to be a little bit. I think prices are going to come down just a touch. They're going to come down a little bit, I think. Now that goes the other part, and my realtors are probably going to punch me again. It's like, oh my gosh, you know, that means the buyers are going to wait. Well, you can wait, and you may get a lower price, but here's the thing: one, you're trading time for money. You're trading time for money. In other words, you're not gaining time, you're losing time, and you're hoping to get more money. And for the people that have been in business, it's actually the inverse. Like you pay for time, like you want more time. That's the one thing we can't get more of. We can get more money, but we can't get more time. So, and I've talked about this in prior videos where, look, if you really, all right, I really want to save $20,000 to $30,000. I don't have to buy right now. I can wait. Okay, that's good. But if you're interested, like you've just retired, or you're ready for a lifestyle change, and you really want to enjoy being in Florida and being in the villages, then I wouldn't wait. Like you could probably get a good deal now because it is summer and there are less buyers out. But you know, I mean, ultimately you have to make a decision for yourself, and you have to decide, okay, is this going to be right for me? I think that's the most important thing, is really look at lifestyle for sure. So basically a little bit of a change in the sense that more pendings versus more buyers. There's a couple things that I want to talk to you about. So let's go ahead and look at, I mean, one thing I've noticed is that the inventory, months of inventory number has changed, right? So months of inventory number has changed. The days on market has changed too. You know, days on market median numbers now at 6 days, which means that, you know, we're looking at when we take, you know, half the homes are selling for above 6 days, and half the homes that are selling below 6 days. The thing that I'm seeing, and this is a real tip. In fact, we're going to look at active properties, and I think this is going to be very helpful for you, because it's going to show a picture of, once it gets past a certain period of time, once you get past a certain period of time, then you need to, then you probably need, and if it's still on the market, you probably need to reduce the price, right? You really need to be looking at reducing the price at that point. So let's take a look at this. I'm going to blow this up for you so you see a little bit bigger. Okay, and essentially what we're looking at here, in this particular screen is the active properties. And we're looking at the active properties here with days on market. Okay, so starting from the low price 174 in it's a manufactured home in the historic section, and then let's take this the other way. Let's look at the higher priced homes for a second. You know, if you look at the top level pricing, 1.9 is the top level price. You know, 1.5. We've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 homes that are over $1 million, and another 7 or 8 homes that are between, you know, about 900 to $1 million. You know, the days on market is growing, right? We're seeing 106, 56, 38, 158, 137, or 37 rather, 11, 42. So days on market for active properties is growing. That is not necessarily measured. What is measured is active, the number of days on market when it goes under contract. So there's two different numbers to pay attention to. And when you're interviewing a realtor, a real estate broker, or a realtor in the state of Florida, in anywhere, by the way, in the villages, anywhere, it doesn't matter. Make sure that you've got an agent, a realtor that is going to understand the numbers and be able to actually show you the tea leaves and actually help you interpret that so they can navigate the marketplace for you. It's really, really key. And that's something that is probably not well known. Maybe it is well known, but that is something to really watch out for. Make sure that they have an understanding of days on market, because when we're looking at this, days on market is growing. Like, we didn't see this 4 months ago, like days on market like this, 56, 158. And this is on the lower end of the scale on the pricing in the villages, 24, 8, 13, 56, that type of thing. A lot of homes here that I'm seeing that are south of 466A, down by, Pinellas. Even some properties, there are a few in here that are in between the sixes, closer to Sumter Landing, that type of thing. And, so a few homes here, 7, 3, 1, 2. A lot of homes here have been on the market more than 20 days. However, let's look at the pending properties. And what you're going to see is, let's take a look at this. The pending properties are going to be a little bit different. So you're going to see some lower. You're seeing a little bit more properties that are lower in days on market, like 2, 23, 7, 6, 3, 17, 7, right? 4, 2, 5. And some in between. You got some larger days, obviously 60, 31, 81. Some more days on market, 1, 1, 32, 25, 1, 7. So we got properties here that are selling then, under a week, right? You're seeing that, like half the properties here are selling over 30 days, and then half the properties are under that 1 week period. What it's also indicating to me is that the ones that have been on the market for over 30 days that are selling, what that tells me is those properties are actually going through a price reduction, process to get to the point where, okay, this makes sense to be the lowest one in the market in that particular category. And we're also noticing the ones that are priced correctly are selling like this, under 7 days. So there is a real thing here where, as a seller, I really pay attention to this. I'm seeing some variances depending on where you are in the United States. So I've analyzed this with a lot of different people, is that if it's under a certain days on market, you're still in the mix. Like what I'm noticing here, I would say, under 10 days on market, you're okay. If it gets past 10 days, then you're overpriced. And the rule of thumb, by the way, is if it's on the market and you're not getting any showings at all, I'm not talking about open house traffic. We do a ton of open houses at Realty Executives. Like, that's one of our things. We also have one of the few companies that do caravan as well. So we give you maximum exposure. So Florida Clay, hope you're doing well. Thank you, brother. So make sure that your realtor is analyzing this with you. They've got to be able to understand the marketplace and help you navigate, because if you're on the market too long, if you wait too long, it could cost you a little bit more money because you waited too long for either a price reduction, or you were too high and the property begins to look stale, that type of thing. So get to that point as fast as possible. So if you're not getting the showings the first couple of days, and only if you're motivated, if you don't have to sell, it's no big deal. If you want to sell, you want to move, then make sure you're getting to that right price as early as possible. That's what I'm seeing in all of this, and I think that's incredibly true. But now, always, just know this also, and I teach this, we're never in any hurry. It's not our house, it's not our money, it's your money. So whatever speed you're on, we're on that speed. So I've given you a couple tips. I got at least one more, which is really, really unique. And I learned this recently. Never thought about this. And the public may not understand this completely, but I want to bring it out. And you may, no matter where you are, you can bring this to your agent. That remember that in the last 2 years, we've had a lot of showings on properties, oftentimes multiple offers. And we're not seeing that so much right now. Not so much multiple offers occasionally, but it's rare right now. We're really in the time period of it might be on the market for several days, you might get one showing, two showings, and then an offer. It's kind of the typical cadence. But remember, we're coming from that time period of getting a lot of showings to now we're getting a handful of showings. So I'm going to, a tip for buyers and a tip for sellers. I'm recommending that as a listing agent, you don't use showing time to reveal the number of showings you have to potential buyers. There's something called showing time. And I know people are going to really punch me on this one, but by showing, you're basically showing your cards in a poker game when you use showing time. And if there are no showings, the buyer's agents could actually go in and say, wait, there's no showings. They haven't had showings in a week. We can offer whatever. Okay. From the buyer's agent side, it's a tip. You can look, how many showings are they getting? Not much. If there's some motivation there from the sellers, you might be able to get a deal. Okay. So watch that closely. I think bottom line on this particular video, I'm going to tell you who you work with really, really matters. Make sure they understand what's going on. If they don't, then maybe you can educate them with some of the tips that I've given you here. And of course, look, if you have questions or if you need a real recommendation, a real powerful agent, you can call me as well, or you can leave a comment here in the chat. Call me 352-572-3796. People are always astonished when I pick up the phone. 352-572-3796. Hope everybody does really well. Have a great weekend and stay cool wherever you are. Take care.